Today, we delve into some astonishing developments that have left Ukraine and Europe reeling. Recent diplomatic maneuvers suggest that the United States and Russia are quietly resolving key issues among themselves, leaving Ukraine and its European allies on the sidelines. Let's break down what is being reported. Let's start with Ukraine's President Zelensky. You might recall him being described as the comedian-turned-president, but now many are saying that he's turned from a comedian into a clown. According to recent reports, Zelensky is in deep shock. Why? Because while some might expect the United States to stand by Ukraine, behind closed doors the US and Russia have been engaging in direct talks. High-ranking officials are involved. On the American side, figures like the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, are negotiating, while on the Russian side, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is taking part. And guess what? Even officials from Saudi Arabia are sitting at the table in their capital, discussing ways to end the war in Ukraine. A striking point emerging from these discussions is that Ukraine has been deliberately left out. There is simply no seat for Ukraine at this new table. Zelensky even tried to visit Saudi by himself. He thought that maybe he will get a seat in the discussions. But when he realized that America has no interest in supporting his government, Zelensky postponed his visit to Saudi Arabia. Zelensky is reported to be furious, feeling betrayed by the United States. He had once believed that the USA, without any ulterior motive, would offer Ukraine billions of dollars to help secure its independence. Meanwhile, across Europe, the situation is equally tense. European nations, Germany in particular, are grappling with the economic consequences of drastically reducing their reliance on Russian energy. Countries like India had also been pressurized to reconsider their energy ties with Russia. For nearly 3 years, this geopolitical drama has unfolded, even prompting Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar to emphasize that Europe's problems are, in fact, the world's problems in a sarcastic tone. In Paris, European leaders held an emergency meeting, driven by the fear that US President Donald Trump might once again claim he can single-handedly end the war, leaving Europe on its own. Some nations, like Poland, have even dismissed the idea of forming a European NATO. And while Zelensky warned that if the US cannot be trusted, Europe must build its own defense alliance.
Let's be honest, now we can't rule out the possibility that America might say no to Europe on issues that threaten it. Many leaders have talked about Europe that needs its own military, an army of Europe. And I really believe that time has come. The armed forces of Europe must be created.
As you can see, his calls received only a few supportive claps. Most European leaders seem cautious, unwilling to risk another war with Russia. Critics argue that Ukraine's fate has been sealed by poor leadership. They say that a single wrong move by a leader can drive an entire nation toward ruin in a matter of months. In this prolonged conflict, now stretching almost 3 years, Ukraine appears to be the biggest loser. The country has suffered massive territorial losses, with large swaths, marked in red on the map, now under Russian control. Even as Ukraine mounts counteroffensives, there is a real possibility that Russia may capture even more territory. From the perspective of some observers, the USA is emerging as the biggest winner. Not a single American soldier has reportedly lost his life, and the United States has brilliantly showcased its defense technology to the world. There is growing speculation that Ukraine's estimated $500 billion in mineral wealth might eventually end up in the hands of American companies. Moreover, most of the money from U.S. government spending isn't going to rebuild Ukraine. It's being funneled into American defense contractors, ensuring that the U.S. defense industry comes out on top. At the same time, Russia is also seen as a secondary winner. Despite the heavy price, numerous soldiers lost, and a battered economy due to sanctions, Russia has secured substantial Ukrainian territory. President Vladimir Putin can now proudly claim that his country has endured more than 23,000 sanctions, far exceeding the combined sanctions on Iran, North Korea, and Syria, and yet, Russia has shown remarkable resilience. Even President Donald Trump has reiterated that Russia has a history of defeating formidable opponents like Napoleon and Hitler. He emphasizes that Russia does not lose wars, citing its powerful military legacy as evidence. When Trump was asked whether Putin's ultimate aim is to annex all of Ukraine, he replied that he had posed the same question to his Russian counterpart, but received no satisfactory answer.
Based on your conversation with President Putin, what do you think he wants ultimately in Ukraine?
I think he wants to stop fighting. I see that. We spoke long and hard. Steve Witkoff was with him for a very extended period, like about 3 hours. I think he wants to stop fighting. They have a big, powerful machine, you understand that. And they defeated Hitler and they defeated Napoleon. You know, they've been fighting a long time. They've done it before. But I think he'd like to. I think he would like to stop fighting.
Do you think he wants the whole of Ukraine, or just what do you think he wants?
No, I think he wants to stop. That was my question to him, because if he's going to go on, that would have been a big problem for us, and that would have caused me a big problem. Because we just can't let that happen.
Furthermore, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has hinted that we might soon see the lifting of sanctions on Russia. When a reporter asked him if all the sanctions would be removed, Rubio explained that sanctions are simply a byproduct of the conflict. If we manage to end the conflict, naturally, these sanctions will come off. He even suggested that the European Union could be persuaded to lift their sanctions as well. There's talk that American companies, like Visa, MasterCard, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola, might eventually return to Russia. Of course, Russia has already built a robust industrial base to rely on.
Well, sanctions are all the result of this conflict. There are sanctions that were imposed as a result of this conflict. And so I would say to you that In order to bring an end to any conflict, there has to be concessions made by all sides. We're not going to predetermine what those are. Certainly not going to negotiate this today or in a press conference for that matter. But and there are other parties that have sanctions. The European Union is going to have to be at the table at some point because they have sanctions as well that have been imposed.
So, what does all this mean for you and me? The key takeaway is a hard lesson for any nation. Don't get entangled in the promises of alliances or let the allure of external support cloud your judgment. When leadership falters, a country can pay an incredibly high price. Ukrainian soldiers have shed their blood for their country, and many now wonder if all these sacrifices were in vain. What do you think about this development? Tell us your thoughts in the comment section.